Please try and keep your questions as broad as you possibly can. Any individualized questions or for individual circumstances might be better off with a one-to-one appointment with a clinician, or you can ping our care coordinators an email and they can get you in touch with the right person. I'm sure one of them will pop the email address in the Q&A section soon. Finally, do enjoy yourself. Try not to pressurize yourself in remembering everything from today's session. There will be recordings available, and anyone who wants the slides and whatnot, we'll be able to send those to you. So we have got, what have we got? We have got a session with Claire talking about menopause. Then you're going to jump back to me and I'm going to talk about HRT. And then Diane is going to jump in at the end, one of our lovely health coaches, and she's going to talk about some lifestyle things that we can do to help with menopause. There will be a feedback form available as well at the end of the session, which is always super helpful for us. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to Claire.
Hopefully you can see my screen. Asia, can you see okay?
Yep, I can see your screen. I can see your slides. We're not presenting, but I can see them.
Lovely. And am I in slideshow view?
Not yet.
Not yet. From beginning. There we go. Is that better?
Hey, yeah, that's it.
Lovely. Okay, so like I said, my name's Claire, one of the paramedics that work with the PCN, and we're just going to talk about what is the menopause, some of the signs and symptoms, and just a bit of an overview really before we start going into medications and lifestyle changes that can be made. So what is the menopause? As you can see from this diagram, in our sort of fertile years, our estrogen and our progesterone, they sort of tick along quite nicely together. And then as you can see, from about 45, they tend to go a bit haywire. So the progesterone will just drops off gradually. And then as you can see, that estrogen just goes up and down like a yo-yo. And that often explains quite a lot of some of the symptoms that us women can experience sort of during that perimenopause and menopause age group. So just to give you a background about what's going on with our hormones during that time. So obviously a lot of time we're asked about what that actually means. So the perimenopause is the time from when the first changes start to happen to your period, and it's until that diagnosis of menopause when those periods stop. Generally, the average age for perimenopause is 47, but as we know, that really does vary. Some people as early as sort of very late 30s, early 40s can start experiencing some of those symptoms, and we'll go into that in a minute. The menopause itself is a bit of a diagnosis because obviously it starts from the last menstrual period, and we count that from like 1 year after that last menstrual cycle. And then postmenopause obviously is that time after the menopause. However, unfortunately, sad for us women that some of us still continue to experience those symptoms even in postmenopause. So when does it occur? Usually it's between the ages of 45, 47. That is sort of the general age that people start to experience those symptoms, with the actual menopause being in the UK being 51. By age 54, they say that about 80% of women will have stopped having periods completely. Obviously, that does age from person to person, and if you've had things like hysterectomies, that will bring on the menopause a lot sooner. Like I said, you can have an early or premature menopause where you start getting those symptoms sort of even before the age of 40. That's known as a different term and is premature menopause or premature ovarian insufficiency. But we do classify it as anyone sort of before the age of 40. That is the early menopause. It is quite rare, but we are seeing more and more women that are experiencing those symptoms earlier. The symptoms. Now, there are 1,000,001 different symptoms that you could experience with the menopause. this is just a few of them. So you can obviously some of the biggest ones that we think about are sort of your hot flushes and night sweats, the mood swings, with the anxiety and the depression. Brain fog is another big one that we hear about quite a lot. Weight gain. We all feel like we get that weight gain and we really struggle more to shift that weight when we hit the menopause. You can get all sort of digestive problems. Vaginal dryness is another really common one. We see a lot of women with that, with sort of obviously your irregular periods, increased urine infections, things like that, and loss of libido. So they're some of the ones. But like I say, this isn't all of them. There are a lot of them. And everyone is very individualized when it comes to the menopause and their symptoms. Some people will be very lucky and just get a few of these, and some will get lots, and in different variations. So when we talk about age, we'll talk about how we manage them, and how we can do that with medications, and even later when we talk about some lifestyle changes. It depends on what your symptoms are and how we can manage those individual symptoms. But we'll talk a bit about that later. But there is lots of symptoms, unfortunately, that you could experience with them. We get asked this a lot. Is there a test that can tell me whether I am going through the menopause? So we take it as gospel that anyone over the age of 45, with the symptoms that they're describing, that most likely are associated with the menopause, we say that you are. Normally what we'll do, depending on what the type of symptoms are, so if it's sort of your fatigue and things like that, then actually what we might do is just a general blood test. Normally you get your NHS health checks that kick in from the age of 40 anyway, but we just make sure that things like your thyroid are okay, you're not anemic, anything like that, that might be another explanation as to why you're feeling those symptoms. If that's not the case, then obviously we do go with anyone over 45, you most likely are experiencing the menopause. So you don't need a blood test to say that. However, generally, anyone below 45, there is this blood test that can be had. It's called the FSH, or the follicle stimulating hormone test, that you can have. However, it is quite has to be done at a certain time of your cycle and then repeated. So it is quite a difficult one to test for. It's not that reliable, but it is out there. So I just wanted to let you know about it. But it is something that is affected if you're on any contraception, that can affect your FSH test anyway. But there is a test, but we only do it under the age of 45 generally. Here are some useful links that I've put up here. The first one is the British Menopause Society. It's got some really information about the signs and symptoms looking out for, as well as going on into about the medications and things like that. Another really useful one is Menopause Matters, which goes over lots of advice. The thing I would say is anyone that is obviously worrying about their symptoms, wondering how they can manage it, put together a symptom tracker. I have put one on there, which is a good one, Rock My Menopause, and put together a list of all the symptoms. Do your research with the other stuff that Asia and Diane are going to talk about, so that when you do go to see a clinician, you've got all of the information, because it's really useful if you can say, for X amount of time I've been experiencing these symptoms, this is what I'm considering, then actually it's really useful, and we can get the most out of your appointment if you're armed and ready with all the information. Okay, hope that helps. I'm going to pass you over to Asia now, and she's going to take over and talk to you about some medication advice.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Claire. I don't think I could see any questions in the chat at the moment, but if any more crop up, of course, we will tackle them as we go on. So let's talk about HRT, hormone replacement therapy, the most common medication that we use to help manage menopause symptoms. So HRT, going back to sort of what Claire said, menopause is a transitional phase. It's a state of change that we go through in our bodies. It's puberty, but worse with adult responsibilities. So as Claire has already pointed out, when we sort of hit premenopause, our cycles are kind of the same. Then they go all over the place, and then they even out when we hit postmenopause. HRT is aiming to ease this area of transition by sort of giving a consistent level of hormones in the body. So less of the ups and downs and try and keep it a bit more consistent, something that your body is able to actually get used to. And then once we hit the postmenopause phase, or once your body sort of regulates itself, we look at reducing and taking the hormones that we're giving you in the HRT. We look at taking those away so that your body can just adjust to what it has on its own. So HRT is never intended as a lifelong medication. That's really important to remember. It is there for this transitional phase. So in a similar way to thinking about, sorry, these cycles where our bodies do have these ups and downs, normal medication will take maybe a couple of weeks to get used to, but when it comes to hormones, because our bodies are working on like a monthly cycle, or they're transitioning out of that monthly cycle, it can take a little bit longer to see symptoms improve, or we can to see response to medication, and that's really normal. So if you do start HRT and you think this isn't doing anything, but it's only been a month, give it a chance. And that's equally why we'll do small dose changes and we'll say give it 3 months before we review it, because that's a fairer time for your body to get used to it. So what kind of HRT is out there? There's so much information, right? Ultimately, what works for you is the best thing to you. It's not always worth comparing against what other people are having because, you know, your bodies are going to be different. So as an overview, HRT, if you have had a hysterectomy or you no longer have a uterus, you only require estrogen-only HRT. And that is available as a tablet, by mouth, a patch, a gel or a spray that we give on the skin, usually on the arms, and your body absorbs the hormones that way. However, if you still have a uterus, which most people will, you are required to have progesterone as well as your estrogen as well. Now, the reason for this is progesterone is produced by our ovaries. So obviously, if you have a hysterectomy, you no longer have the organ part that is producing that hormone, so we don't need to replace it. But without progesterone, estrogen can kind of get out of hand. The estrogen will grow our womb lining, and the progesterone is what tells it to stop growing. So without that regulating hormone, that lining can get a bit out of control. It can cause endometrial growths. It increases our risk of things like endometrial cancer. So that's why we need both. These can come as a combined product. So a combined product like a patch, Everel Sequi, Everel Conti, if anybody's using those, or as a tablet, as a combined tablet. Personally, as a clinician, I prefer to prescribe these hormones separately, just because it gives us a lot more control over the doses, and we can change just the estrogen or just the progesterone, as opposed to when it's all combined in one, we don't get that control. But you know, it's what works for you, right? Progesterone is typically the Mirena coil is usually what's most recommended, especially to start off with, because it does provide contraceptive cover, whereas the HRT on its own doesn't give enough hormones to provide contraceptive cover. So if you are pre-menopausal or perimenopausal or somewhere in there, you might still need to take contraception or use contraceptive methods whilst even if you're on HRT, because it's not enough to cover it. Otherwise, we have the capsules of progesterone, as usually Utrogestan is the brand that we tend to see a lot of, and estrogen similarly. They are tablets, patches, gel, spray, what have you. Now, from here, to complicate it even further, we might need to change the way that you take your HRT. So you might be taking a sequential regime, which is sometimes called a cyclical regime, or a continuous regime. If you think back to that graph that we had, where we had that phase where our hormones are going up and down, they're still kind of forming some kind of cycle. That's where we want the sequential regime. It's more in line with what your body is naturally trying to produce, that cycle of hormones. Typically, it's the same dose of estrogen every day, and the progesterone will change 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, is what we typically see. Obviously, you can't do that with something like the Mirena coil, so you would usually be having your progesterone as a capsule. And when we move further into that postmenopausal stage, so not as many ups and downs, we're starting to teeter off. We want to, again, just reflect what the body is naturally doing a bit more. So we go to a continuous regime, and that is usually the same dose every day of both of the hormones, and we keep that consistent. And then from there, of course, we reduce once we get to the right stage of doing that. So risks of HRT. This is, of course, a really important thing to talk about. So we talked a little bit about the progesterone and estrogen, and if you have your uterus still and you don't have your progesterone, we call that unopposed estrogen. So it's the estrogen without the progesterone. We talked about the endometrial cancers. The risk of clots, so deep vein thrombosis or pulmonary embolism, is usually higher with when you take your hormones by mouth as opposed to through the skin. And the greatest risk is in the first 12 months of use. Heart disease is usually with combined HRT when we are giving it to people over the age of 60. Typically, by the time we hit the age of 60, unless you've had a very, very late menopause, you probably don't need HRT if it's still there. Unless, there's very rare instances where we might weigh up the risks and the benefits and say, actually, the benefit is probably better for this patient. But of course, that's an individual conversation. Most people will not be taking HRT past the age of 60. Similarly, the risk of stroke is higher over the age of 60 when you're taking it by mouth. And breast cancer is a slight increase in risk. Interestingly, when you have both hormones, the progesterone and the estrogen, and not just the estrogen on its own, there's a slight increase of risk when we use it for longer than 5 years. And again, this is going back to that idea that menopause is a transitional phase. We don't need to be on the medication forever. It's unlikely that menopause is going to last, or the most symptomatic phases of menopause are going to last longer than 5 years. So I get a lot of questions about testosterone, so I thought I'd have a little chat about it. So it's not actually licensed for use in the UK for menopause and HRT, not yet anyway. That's why if people are prescribing it, it is usually a specialist in menopause that will be prescribing the testosterone. It is incredibly difficult to use. Think how big 2.5 grams is, and that is the sachet, and you need to use 1/8 of a sachet a day. So that is 1/8 of 2.5 grams. I'm not going to do that maths in my head this evening, but you can. So yeah, it's very, very difficult to work. They're very difficult to use. It is also not guaranteed to work in a similar way that HRT isn't guaranteed to work. As with most things in life, there's no one answer. It's sometimes a little bit of everything. So HRT might help with some of the symptoms, but actually doing certain exercises or eating certain foods might also help with other symptoms, or even sort of mindfulness and things can help with other symptoms. So it is a little bit of everything. So in a similar way, testosterone is not guaranteed to work for everything. And we must have tried the max dose of estrogen, progesterone, HRT, traditional HRT first. So we must have gone all the way up. And sometimes that can involve a blood test as well, checking if your body is actually taking up the estrogen that we're giving you. Some people don't absorb it super duper well through their skin, and we can confirm that with a blood test as well. So if we do that, and in some cases we will, and we usually say 2 to 3 months on a new dose before we check the estrogen levels and make sure that they are in line with what we would expect to see. Testosterone in terms of what it actually helps treat, there's only a couple of symptoms really, and that is a loss of libido and energy levels. They're the only times that we really see it used. I will say though, when it does come to a loss of libido, menopause is, we keep saying it's a transitional phase. Our bodies are going to change in that phase as well. So actually doing sort of thought exercises or mindfulness exercises to do with our body, and understanding the change that it's going through and accepting the change that it's going through, and having that with any intimate relations that we have, that's also a really good way to help with libido as well. It's not just waiting for it to happen. Sometimes we've got to put some work into it as well, in different ways, a little bit of everything, right? So stopping HRT, ideally after about 5 years of use, we reduce over the course of months, as opposed to days, weeks, for the reasons we've already discussed. It's a very slow process. So if you've ever accidentally missed a dose of your HRT and you feel like menopause has come back, overnight menopause, they're what we call rebound symptoms, and it's where the reduction has happened too quickly. Your body's not had enough time to adjust to the new dose. Really normal, and that's exactly why we don't do that. Your reducing regime will be specific to you and your clinician. Have a good chat with them, put a reducing plan in place, and agree with it. And you'll probably review sort of 3, 6 monthly, depending on how quickly you respond. But ultimately, it's as quick as you feel able to do it. The other thing is, if you did want to try it yourself, and you're using patches, use surgical tape to cover up a little bit of the patch at a time. So a quarter to start off with, then a half, and then like 3/4 and what have you, and do that over the course of 3 to 6 months. And it will help reduce it in a nice, calm, controlled way as well. Cool. So key points: menopause is transitional state. HRT is used during the transitional phase of menopause. It's not for lifelong. HRT is not going to fix everything, and it's specific to you and you alone. So I believe we have a lot of questions, as we usually do. So here is my face, and let's have a look at some questions. Right. Oh goodness, there are quite a few. Chronic fatigue. Could this be bad with peri? My blood tests have all come back normal. So yeah, fatigue, that definitely might be worth maybe a bigger chat with the clinician or a clinician. It sounds like there's a lot of different things going on. Menopause, fatigue definitely could be going hand in hand, but as Claire's already said, menopause is normally diagnosed with context to a lot of other symptoms as well. So definitely worth a deeper chat. If you wanted to email the care coordinators, more than happy to book you in with me and we can have a chat about that. That graph looks more like my brain thinking, if any. Yeah, same, me too. I can appreciate that. I'm unable to tolerate Mirena or any hormones as they trigger migraines. So in this scenario, what would I take? So in this scenario, I would probably lean more into the lifestyle elements that I think. Have a listen to what Diane says in the next section, but she's got loads of fantastic ways that don't involve medication. There are also herbal remedies over the counter. So Menopause is a brand that springs to mind. They use soy-based compounds that have a similar shape to the estrogens that we use in HRT. So they can help provide some relief of symptoms as well. So have a look at herbal remedies online. Like I say, Menopause, MENOPACE. That can be a nice alternative or an adjunct to anything else that you're doing. Don't want the Mirena coil. Is it possible to go down? Yes, absolutely. So yeah, Mirena coil is usually, like I say, it's a great one because it lasts 5 years. You don't have to think about it, what have you. If you don't want it, that's absolutely fine. Your progesterone can be done in capsules and estrogen in whatever other form you fancy. I've been cyclical HRT patches for 12 months, been told I can change to continuous HRT patches. Is this true? Yes, that is absolutely correct. I would need more information to guide you onto which patches that would be. So if you wanted to email the care coordinators and get booked in, we can talk about that. But if it is something like Everol Sequi to Everol Conti patches, then yeah, that would be fine. If it's the right stage, sometimes what we see is people will get period control when they go on to sequential HRT. So for example, Everol Sequi patches, I'm guessing here. And then they'll get period control, they'll stop having bleeds or it will be consistent, and then they'll go away, and then they'll come back with a vengeance and they'll be like really bad and really heavy. And that's where we need to move from the sequential regime to the continuous regime, because at that point we're giving the hormones that are causing the cycle, as opposed to your body producing the hormones that is causing the cycle. Your body has moved into the continuous phase, but we're still giving you sequential. So we need to change it and line it up to what your body is naturally doing. So it might be worth a chat about your symptoms as a whole and see if it is the right phase or right time to look at continuous, or if we can give it a little bit longer. I believe you get up to about 2 years, depending, give or take, on sequential. But yeah, like I say, maybe worth a more detailed chat. Is there anything available after breast cancer? So I'll be honest, that's a bit out of my expertise. That will probably be a good chat with any oncologist that you may have had. I believe in most instances they will avoid any hormonal input, any HRT, any estrogens. A progesterone only HRT isn't really a thing. So I know there are some compounds that we use that suppress other hormones that may be an option for you depending on your cancer history and things like that. So maybe worth a one-to-one chat or a chat with your oncologist on that one. Can your estrogen levels be too high in peri and cause symptoms? I don't see why not. I'll be honest, a lot of stuff is very general. A lot of the information, a lot of the guidance documents, a lot of the reference documents are they're very general, and we're only now really doing proper research into female health and things like menopause, and how like female hormones affect other conditions and things. So that might be something that we get more information about as time goes on. But yeah, I don't see why that couldn't be the case. Yeah, right. I'm on testosterone and it's been, oh, hang on. Sorry, it got lost. I'm on testosterone. It's been the missing link for me. It's been amazing for my energy levels and clarity of thinking. Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing. I'm really glad that you've had that experience with testosterone. Is Marina by itself safe regarding endometrial cancer? It does have its own set of risk factors. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. I'm absolutely happy to have a more detailed chat with you about that. But I believe the cancer risk is more tipped towards the estrogen and having the estrogen without the progesterone, whereas the progesterone on its own is not as high. But like I say, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I can absolutely find out for you if you want to ping me an email or ping the care coordinators an email, and I'll get back to you. How important is it to take capsules and gel at the same time every day as well as on an empty stomach? Even after 16 months of being on HRT, I'm finding the routine difficult. Super appreciate that. Yeah, it can be quite difficult to remember to take things at the same time every day. Personally, I recommend the progesterone at nighttime, mostly because it can help with sleep. Progesterone is known to do that. So nighttime progesterone and daytime estrogen. But if you're having 1 or 2 pumps of gel, morning is fine. If you're having 3 or 4 pumps of gel, you're better off splitting them up. So having 2 in the morning and 2 later on, for example. In terms of finding the routine, I find alarms are really good, phone alarms. If you do like putting your medication next to your toothbrush, you're in the routine of brushing your teeth twice a day anyway, but popping your medication there will prompt you to do that. So we can piggyback the reminder for medication on existing habits that you already have. Again, that's another one we can maybe have a bit more of a deep chat about. But yeah, there's definitely ways of doing it. But phone alarm springs to mind, and popping your meds next to your toothbrush are the other ones. They're my 2 go-tos. Been on estrogen gel and Nutrigestan for 6 months after being off HRT for the last 6 years due to cancer diagnosis. Menopause symptoms remain, so started the above medication 3 months ago and no difference. I'm age 59 and still have hot flushes, brain fog, etc. So you're on estrogen. It might be that your estrogen dose needs adjusting. So this is why I say I like to prescribe them or like to give them separately, because we can control that. Sometimes, so it's all about the ratio of the 2 together. So you know how we say the progesterone is making sure that the estrogen doesn't do too much work. It's about that ratio, and that ratio is going to be slightly different for everyone because we're all individual people with our own genetics and DNA. So if your estrogen and your progesterone, for example, this is just numbers off the top of my head, if they're 1 to 1 and your body actually needs it to be like 2 to 1, then we might need to change the estrogen dose. So we might need to up the amount of your gel pumps that you're having. Again, if you want to have an appointment with me, we can talk about it. Again, we can talk about symptoms as well. sometimes the addition of an antidepressant called a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, an SSRI, we add that in as part of HRT regimes because we've got evidence to show that it actually helps with hot flushes, and it can be really helpful for some of the cognitive problems that we face in menopause. So any of the emotional dysregulation, anxiety, depression, of course, that comes along with it as well, can sometimes help with energy levels as well, because mental health and body, they're all connected. If one is suffering, the other one is absolutely suffering as well. So yeah, it may be that we've got the levels right and we need to consider approaching it from a different angle. So yeah, maybe worth us having a chat at some point there. So yeah, ping the care coordinators an email. What else have we got? I've lots of bleeding and clotting. I've taken Yasmin for 3 days, but it gives me a headache, stomachache, and makes me very emotionally unstable, depressed, grumpy, anxiety. Is there any alternative medication I can take? Thank you. If I'm correct, Yasmin is a contraceptive and not a HRT. It would depend what you're taking it for and what have you. That sounds like we might need to delve into that a little bit deeper, and I don't want to air your personal medical history if you're not feeling comfortable doing that. So do you want to ping a message to the care coordinators, and we can have a proper chat at some point? When finishing HRT, do you have periods for a while? And if so, for how long and how heavy? So that's going to be a case by case basis. Everybody, again, super duper different. It's unlikely that you would be seeing periods when you're coming off HRT, because by that stage, we would like to think that we're kind of not having periods anymore. So it might be more of a breakthrough bleed that you're having. But it's not uncommon. If we're changing the hormone levels, your body's going to respond. It's just the way it is. And our bodies are responsive to transitions. So of course, super responsive to menopause. But any ups or downs that we get in our hormone levels is when we get symptoms, not the level itself. If it's consistent, it all calms down. And that's why post-menopause is where we all want to be. But when it is in that state of change, we get symptoms. So it might be that maybe we finished HRT a bit too quickly for yourself here, or perhaps it wasn't the right time to look at reducing and coming off it. Your body wasn't ready to make that step. Again, might be worth having a bigger chat. And it just be worth just checking that out, especially if you are having heavy bleeds for and not expecting them. Right. Ooh. Can you take menopause supplements at the same time as HRT? That really depends on your supplement and your HRT. So yeah, if you've got a specific question, please do ping us an email and I can help you answer that question. Yeah, cool. I have endometriosis. I've had mixed answers when I've asked about HRT. I'm 50 and my period has stopped since Feb, and I feel like I have constant PMS. Is there any advice on HRT when someone has endo? I actually have another patient who is in a really similar situation to yourself, and she has quite chronic endometriosis and had a chemically induced menopause. And she's found that HRT is actually, since this chemically induced menopause, HRT has actually helped her endometriosis symptoms, possibly because we are providing consistency or more consistency in her hormone levels. Again, so this is kind of going back to what we were saying about the research is only really now coming out, where we're actually investigating female bodies and how female hormones affect bodies. There's no official guidance that I am currently aware of specifically for endometriosis and HRT. I imagine it will be a conversation between your gynecologist. But I will also say that gynecologists who are there to treat endometriosis may not know all the ins and outs of HRT, because they're not there to help with the HRT, they're there to help with their endometriosis. It could be worth a try, and it could be the kind of thing that maybe we try you for 3 to 6 months and you see how it goes, and if it doesn't work, we don't do it. But yeah, again, that might be have a little bit more of a specific chat, see what kind of risks there are for yourself based on your situation, and we can go from there. But yeah, it could help. It might not help, but it sounds like it might be worth a try. I missed the first 10 minutes and the sound keeps cutting. Yes, there will be a recording available afterwards. We're actually working on a YouTube channel of recordings of all of our sessions. So if you have a look for Ivor Valley South, that will be out there somewhere. If not, again, just ping us an email and we will make sure that you get a link sent to you, but there will be a recording available. Apologies if you said this. What is the maximum dose a day of estrogen? I'm on patches and sometimes I feel like it can be more than it is giving me. So I think off the top of my head, when it comes to patches, we don't really go above 100. When it comes to gel pumps, we don't really go above 6 pumps. This is really off the top of my head, so I might not be 100% accurate on that. Sometimes feel it can be more than it is giving me. It sounds like it might be worth trialing a reduction then at that phase. So the thing we said about surgical tape, or ping us an email and you and me, we can make a nice reduction plan together. And we'll book in reviews and stuff and we can go from there. I missed the introductions. I'm with Sheffield Health Centre. Is there a menopause go-to person I can talk about my HRT and symptoms? I haven't worked with Sheffield Health Centre for a while, so I am not 100% sure off the top of my head. But if you ping our care coordinators an email, I'm sorry, I'm going to sound like a broken record saying that, we can absolutely get you in contact with the correct person or someone appropriate to chat to you about HRT. I'm sure there will be someone who is able to chat to you about HRT at Sheffield. I'm just not 100% sure who that person is off the top of my head. Um, mm, mm, mm. When on HRT, does it stop the fluctuations which cause me migraine, or does it just follow the same line but top up your levels? Depends on what regime you're doing. So if you're doing a sequential or cyclical regime, your progesterone is going to be there for 2 weeks and then off for 2 weeks and then there for 2 weeks and then off for 2 weeks. Typically with migraines, though, it does tend to be the estrogen that people are responding to. Which is consistent, so you might get on better with that. But if we are doing a continuous regime, and sometimes that might be more appropriate for you, even if you haven't started HRT yet, maybe we go straight in with a continuous regime and give you that consistency. So the idea is that your body kind of adjusts to what we're giving you as well. So yeah, does it follow the same line and top up your levels? It's a bit of both, but the idea is that your body does stabilize itself out a bit more so that it is consistent. So maybe some change to start off with and then it calms down. Okay. Question sent by email. Marina coil for contraception, have been since 2020. How do I know when if I no longer have periods? I have no clue what's really going on. This is really common to see. Contraceptives do tend to mask HRT. Sorry, contraceptives do tend to mask menopause symptoms. So you will still see some symptoms. They may just not be as intense as you would expect. So again, symptom diaries are really helpful here because it helps us see an overall picture of what's going on. Right, I'm going to do two more and then I'm going to hold the rest of the questions until after Diane's section. I will come back to them. I just want to make sure that Diane gets to have her bit said as well. I'm 55, I've been menopausal for a few years. I've suffered all the symptoms shown on your list. I've started Cleovans and estrogel. A few days later, I was told by a different doctor to stop the estrogel and start levothyroxine as my thyroid was found by my blood test to be malfunctioning. I'm permanently exhausted and cannot concentrate with blurry vision despite an eye test showing no change. Should I go back on estrogen? Any advice, please? Just have some consistency. Stop changing your medication for a bit and have some consistency. Give your body some time to adjust. Your body will take longer to adjust to thyroid medication, and yeah, so just give some time to adjust. If you wanted to talk more about that, let's book an appointment. 46, have regular periods. They're heavier and absolutely wipe me out energy-wise for a good few days. Is this typical perimenopausal symptom? What can I do non-HRT to help? Yeah, that's a very, very, yeah, that's a typical perimenopausal symptom to see changes to your period. So things like magnesium, things like zinc can really help. Iron supplements can be helpful, especially if you are noticing that your bleed is a lot heavier than it has been in the past. So that can be worth an option. I'm going to stop talking because I think Diane is going to be the queen of answering this question. I think she's going to have all the answers for you. She's going to have all the lifestyle stuff for you. So I'm going to hand over to Diane, so I can sip some water and have a breather. But yeah, feel free to keep sending your messages and we can come back to them after Diane's done her bit. So cool. Diane, are you there? Are you ready to jump in?
I'm here. I'm going to attempt to use my slides where I pre-recorded my voice, but I will be here for Q&A at the end. Click share. So my computer is really slow, so apologies.
I think the window and choose that way. Oh, hi, all right.
Just having a tiny bit of issues. What? Let me just get my tech.
Hi, your mum. Yeah. That's fine. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to discuss 4 areas where we can incorporate healthy habits to support us through our journey of menopause, to maintain our health and well-being. As Claire mentioned, menopause can affect our minds, our bones, our muscles, and our digestive health. So I would like to discuss how we can incorporate well-being behaviors to alleviate some of these distressing symptoms. I have focused on how we can protect our mental health, protect our bones, protect our muscles, protect our gut health to achieve better well-being during the menopause. Mind matters. As was mentioned before, we suffer with anxiety, low mood, irritability, memory lapses during this time. Claire also mentioned palpitations. A simple technique to alleviate anxiety and palpitations is to practice diaphragmatic breathing or box breathing. This can be done 3 to 4 times daily and even at the time of the palpitations or feelings of anxiety. I have provided a video link in the resources page, but it is simple way of breathing is to slowly breathe in with one hand on your chest and the other one on your tummy. This can be done either laying down, sitting, or standing. You fill your belly with air. You should feel your hand on your belly rising, and the hand on the chest should remain still. Then slowly breathe out. Do this for 3 to 4 minutes. This is even better if you can do it in some green space or in the garden if possible. Another mental well-being action for the mind is to do nothing. Well, not absolutely nothing, but just to stop for maybe 10 to 30 minutes and listen to music or calming sounds like birds in the garden. Most of us have smartphones or a bit of garden or both. Really listen to the sounds you have chosen. It lowers your heart rate, reduces anxiety. Gentle yoga is also a way to rest the mind and distract you for the time that you are doing the practice, as you will be focused on your posture and breathing. It's like saying to the brain, nothing to see here, nothing to see over here. And that is in that worry space. But look over here where I need to get this breathing thing right. Try not to give in to memory lapses. If you cannot remember a word, try to find associations with the word. Describe the things associated with the word. Or if it's a name, concentrate on the person and try to recall as much background information associated with them. If it's a fact that you knew that you've known in the past, do not Google it. If you know you knew this in the past, just keep thinking about it and exercise that memory recall. And last but not least, share what you are feeling with others who are supportive and understanding. Talking about a problem reduces the power over you. So use support groups, friends and family. Explain why you are not your usual self, or you are feeling a bit down, or you are not motivated to move a little bit. And this may help them help you. Bone pain, osteo issues. How do we protect our bones? One way is to try and get an adequate amount of calcium in your diet from food sources. If you have a varied diet, you should be able to get enough calcium from food. Some people may have to supplement, but your clinician will tell you when that is needed. So some good sources of calcium are milk, cheese, and other dairy foods, green leafy vegetables such as broccoli, cabbage, and okra, but not spinach, soybeans, tofu, plant-based drinks such as soya drink with added calcium, nuts, bread and anything made with the fortified flour, fish where you can eat the bones such as sardines and pilchard. Some strength or resistance training can increase bone density. So certain weight-bearing exercises can help protect our bones. Walking with a weighted vest, body weight exercises like wall push-ups, assisted squats, lifting tins of beans or bottles of water. If you have mobility issues, seated workouts are also effective. Getting adequate amounts of protein is also very important to maintain our muscles, so this is how we protect our muscles. The more muscles we have, the better energy stores we have, where we must maintain our physical strength and to support our bones. Muscle stiffness is another issue that negatively affects our well-being during menopause. Try to maintain some muscle flexibility. Keep shoulders mobile. If you can touch your toes now, you should be able to do so for the next 20 years or so if you practice every day. Keep muscles elastic with daily gentle stretches. You can Google some stretches for menopause. I have put a couple of links at the end of the slides. So pay attention to your protein intake. So protein requirements for an adult is 0.75 grams per kilogram of body weight. Some good sources of protein are eggs, milk, yogurt, fish and seafood, chicken and turkey, soya, nuts and seeds, pork, beans and pulses, tofu and tempeh. I know there will be some sensory issues or taste issues or religious issues with food, so just stick to the foods that you are able to eat and try to get adequate amounts of the protein that you need. Again, strength training, resistance training will maintain muscle mass and keep your strength so you can continue to be physically active. And stretching to remain flexible as mentioned before. Let's get rough. You may have heard people talking about roughage. Yes, that's fiber. Getting enough fiber in your diet is extremely important for protecting our digestive health. Maintain healthy cholesterol levels and blood sugar levels. Fibers are split into three categories: soluble, insoluble, and resistant starch. Soluble fibers, foods high in this type of fiber, can help you feel full. They also help reduce constipation by speeding up the time it takes for feces or poo to pass through your body. Some soluble fiber can reduce the amount of cholesterol absorbed from your small intestine, and these can be found in fruit, oats, barley, and psyllium husk. Insoluble fiber is a type of fiber that doesn't dissolve in water. It's found in high fiber and whole grain, breads, cereals, and other skin, and the outer skins of fruit and vegetables, nuts and seeds. Because insoluble fiber absorbs water, it often helps to soften the contents of your bowel and keep your bowel movements or your poos regular. This helps to prevent constipation. Then there's resistant starch. Resistant starch is another type of carbohydrate that isn't easily absorbed. Different ways of cooking can create different amounts of resistant starch. For example, resistant starch is found in slightly undercooked or al dente pasta, cooked but cooled potatoes, including potato salad, cooked and cooled pasta, rice, green bananas, beans, lentils. In general, foods that are less highly processed contain more resistant starch. An important benefit of resistant starch is that it ferments. Fermenting produces substances that can help keep the lining of your bowel healthy and avoid irritable bowel disease. So we mentioned the types of fiber, we mentioned the sources of fiber, and how we can get resistant starch. I've also added a link at the end where you can get some more information about fiber. Yes, it is a gut feeling. We talked about fiber on the previous slide, and that takes us nicely into ways we can protect our gut health. Protecting our gut requires getting enough fiber, looking after our friendly gut microbes and bacteria, and moving our bodies and keeping hydrated. When we do these 4 things, it allows our gut bacteria to produce happy and mood-stabilizing hormones, which will reduce anxiety, improve mood, improve sleep, motivate us to keep moving, help to control levels of blood, fats, and sugars. Yes, tummy bugs can be friendly. Friendly bacteria in the gut is important for extracting nutrients from the food we eat. These bugs love fiber, hence why we need our 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day. When we nourish our tummy bugs, we nourish our whole bodies, because when they produce the chemicals that we need to be healthy, then we keep our whole bodies healthy. Foods high in refined sugars and low in fiber, such as ultra-processed foods, can destroy our friendly bacteria. So a dark chocolate, 70% or above, would be much more fiber in it than if you had a Cadbury chocolate bar or something similar. Bacteria helps the body to create happy hormones using the high fiber foods that we eat. Moving can also promote the growth of healthy gut bacteria. So here are a list of foods that have friendly bacteria that we can incorporate into our diet. You can mix and match. You can have a little bit every day of something, or you can try a different one every day, depending on how you feel and what you can afford, of course. Some of these you can make yourself, which would be much cheaper in the long run. So they are sourdough, which is a 24-hour to 48-hour fermented sourdough bread with whole grains and high fiber. Kimchi, which is a Korean pickled cabbage with a little bit of spice. Kombucha is a fermented tea. You can make this yourself if you get the starter bacteria. Natural yogurt, plain yogurt, no added sugars, no added fruit. Kefir milk or kefir water. So kefir milk is like a liquid yogurt rather, and it has a lot more bacteria than natural yogurt. Kefir water, you just add kefir grains to a little bit of water with a pinch of fruit in it, and you can create your own kefir water at home. You can also have salt pickled vegetables with no added vinegar, like sauerkraut, for example. Aged cheese, like a mature cheddar, and apple cider vinegar. Just be mindful. There are lots of information online about drinking apple cider vinegar daily. I would just be careful with that so you don't burn your throat. I usually just mix it in a dressing and use it on salads or dress fish with it. As you know, we can't live without water, so let's keep hydrated. Notice the color of your urine. This will tell you how much fluid you need per day. Straw-colored urine is what is best. Keep drinking until you see that color, if you can. Sometimes medication can change the color of your urine. Then you notice your thirst. If you feel hungry, drink a glass of water and wait 10 minutes. Then if you are still hungry, then you are hungry. If you do not feel hungry after the glass of water, then it was thirst. So this is a great way to work out how much water you need. Checking the color of your urine, and every time you feel hungry, have a glass of water or a cup of tea or something wet. Soups also counts towards your fluid intake, and notice the color of your urine. Here are a list of resources I mentioned earlier. I wish you better health, and thank you for listening.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Diane.
I just realized I missed out the slide with the QR code, but that will be in when we share it. Yes?
Okay, for the
Should I put it back
feedback.
up?
Fine. So we do have a question for you, Diane. Why not
Yes.
spinach? This person loves spinach.
So, well, just as regards calcium, it is not a great source of calcium, and sometimes spinach can inhibit the absorption of calcium if we have too much spinach with our meals. But if we want iron from spinach, then we would add some vitamin C to that. So you might, I don't know if some people would squeeze lemon juice on their spinach before they have it. In my country, in my culture, we would put sour mangoes in our spinach when we cook it. So if you want iron, so just don't use spinach as a main source of calcium intake. That's the only reason I said not spinach, because sometimes spinach with the other high calcium foods can inhibit the absorption of calcium. So maybe don't mix them.
Fabulous. Right. So we have some other questions. I have also got an email about the QR code, so I'm going to find that. But you guys can do some feedback. So your question about HRT, why have it on an empty stomach? So if you have it 2 hours after food, that is absolutely fine. That will count as an empty stomach. The only reason for that is purely that you just absorb a little bit more out of it. So essentially, as long as it's consistent, that's the main thing you need to be worried about. Like whether you're taking it on an empty stomach or not, if that makes any sense. So yeah, it would reduce the effect just because you're not getting the full dose. The question here about being in sync with your cycle, that's a really interesting question. I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to it. I don't see why we couldn't adjust that. However, that's a conversation that you and I would perhaps have on a one-to-one basis a little bit more. Let me share this QR code. There we go. I don't know if I can see any of the questions as well. Someone might need to shout questions at me. Are any of my colleagues willing to do that? If there are any more.
Oh, I'm just going to have a quick look now for you, Asia.
Thank
Bear
you.
with me.
I can't see the QR code.
Oh, okie doke.
So there's we've got a question, excuse me, I think for Asia. Get lots of symptoms such as night sweats and memory difficulties, but then they disappear for a few months. Is this a sign of perimenopause?
So it's memory difficulty, then they disappear. Could be, yeah, could be. Start with taking a symptom diary and see how often they're occurring. If it does seem to be in line with periods or when you would expect to see your periods, then yeah, definitely could be. But symptom diary, ultimately, we can make the best prescribing decisions for you, or we can get you the right medication for you based on how well you know your body. The better you know your body, the better you're able to tell us what's going on. It means that we can tailor everything to you super duper well. So start with taking a symptom diary. I think the QR code for the feedback form is on the screen if you're able to fill it out. But yeah, were there any other questions at all?
I've got one for Diane. Should we weigh food for things like protein intake, etc.?
You're on mute.
You can if you want to, if it helps you to get the hang of it. But can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're all good, Di.
Yeah. So for example, 100 grams of fish, chicken, turkey, beef would give you approximately 25 grams of protein. So when you buy your meat, just quickly check the back and see what it weighs, and that will give you an idea of what you're doing. So you can drip feed your protein over the day, but just know that you can quickly Google that on the British Dietetic Association website. I've put a link at the end, but you can Google protein content of food. But generally, animal protein will give you 20 to 25 grams of protein per 100 grams, and pulses will give you a little less.
Okay, I think that is all of the questions that I can see in the Q&A section. Of course, by all means, drop an email over to the care coordinators if you do think of anything else that you might want to add.
And can I just say, the care coordinators will refer on to me if anyone wants a one-to-one personalized nutrition support for menopause.
Thank you, Di. So there is a QR code on the screen for any feedback that you are able to share with us. It would be greatly appreciated if you're able to give that a scan with your phone and let us know how we got on tonight.
I think Asia's having some technical difficulties and we've lost her. So thank you, Asia, for all your input today. It's been really, really interesting. And thank you to all the people who have joined us today. Again, I hope you found it really interesting. And any questions, any queries, please just email the care coordinators and we'll respond to you in a few days.
Thank you, Jackie. I think that is all from us at Ivor Valley South this evening. Thank you very much for joining. We'll leave the QR code on the screen for a little while if anyone does still need to leave us some feedback. And the care coordinators will get back to any emails in due course. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you again to our wonderful speakers. Thank you.